PARI Robotics, Introduction to PPE, MIOSHA Part 33. The purpose of this training is to inform employees and subcontractors of MIOSHA General Industry Safety Standards and PARI Robotics Safe Work Practices. Personal Protective Equipment. The purpose of the Personal Protective Equipment Program is to develop and implement the procedures for the identification, use, care, and maintenance of PPE required to be used by employees for the prevention of illness and injury. All employees are required to follow the minimum procedures outlined in this program. Any deviations from this program must be immediately brought to the attention of the program administrator. PPE Program Responsibilities. Management of PARI Robotics is committed to the safety and health of its workers. Management supports the efforts of the PPE Program Administrator by pledging financial and leadership support for the identification of hazards and implementation of appropriate PPE for those hazards. Management will regularly communicate with the employees about this program. Program Administrator reports directly to upper management and is responsible for the hazard assessments, implementation, training, and administration of the PPE program. The Program Administrator will monitor the results of the program to determine additional areas of focus as needed. The Program Administrator will also conduct workplace hazard assessments to determine the presence of hazards that require the use of PPE, select and purchase PPE, review, update, and conduct PPE hazard assessments, maintain records on hazard assessments, maintain records on PPE assignments and training, provide training, guidance, and assistance to supervisors and employees on the proper use, care, and cleaning of approved PPE, periodically reevaluate the suitability of previously selected PPE, review, update, and evaluate the overall effectiveness of PPE use, training, policies, and program. Supervisors have the primary responsibility for implementing and enforcing PPE use in their work area, including, but not limited to, providing appropriate PPE and making it available to employees, ensuring that employees are trained on the proper use, care, storage, and cleaning of PPE, ensuring that PPE training certification and evaluation forms are signed and in the employee's file, ensuring that employees properly use and maintain their PPE, notifying the program administrator when new hazards are introduced or when processes are added or changed, ensuring that defective or damaged PPE is immediately disposed of and replaced, ensuring that employee-owned PPE is adequate and properly maintained. Employees are responsible for following the requirements of the PPE program, including, but not limited to, properly wearing PPE as required, attending required training sessions, properly caring for, cleaning, storing, maintaining, and inspecting PPE as required, following program policies and rules, informing the supervisor of the need to repair or replace PPE. Employees who repeatedly disregard and do not follow PPE procedures and rules will face disciplinary action up to and including termination. Site managers are to conduct a pre-task analysis to identify and abate possible hazards for all tasks that have identifiable hazards and conduct weekly audits. Employees shall be made aware of the pre-task analysis and sign on the acknowledgement page after review. The pre-task analysis reminds employees and supervisors to verify operators are licensed for powered industrial trucks, aerial and scissor lifts, or cranes. Identify energy sources involved in the task. Identify all hazards related to the task. Chronologically identify the project steps from start to completion. identify potential hazards in each project step, identify and utilize control measures to mitigate the potential hazards, including PPE. Before any employee is allowed to perform work in areas requiring PPE, they must first receive training in the proper use and care of the PPE they will be using. Periodic retraining will be offered to PPE users as identified by the lack of knowledge or the improper use of PPE after changes in work tasks or at the supervisor's request. The training will include, at a minimum, the following subjects: when it is necessary to wear PPE, what PPE is necessary, how to properly put on, take off, adjust, and wear PPE, the limitations of PPE, and the proper care, maintenance, useful life, and disposal of the PPE. Eye and face protection. Each affected employee will use appropriate eye and face protection equipment when exposed to hazards from flying objects or particles, molten metal, fumes, chemical liquids, gases, vapors, dusts, acids, caustics, and other potentially injurious chemical or physical hazards. Use appropriate eye protection equipment with filter lenses that have a shade number appropriate for the work being performed when exposed to eye hazard from potentially injurious light radiation. When wearing prescription lenses while engaged in operations that involve eye hazards, wear eye protection that incorporates the prescription in its design, or wear eye protection that can be worn over the prescription lenses without disturbing the prescription lenses or the protective lenses. Foot protection. Each affected employee will wear protective footwear when working in areas where there is a danger of objects falling on or rolling across the foot, piercing the sole, and where the feet are exposed to electrical or chemical hazards. Foot protection will comply with appropriate ANSI standards. Hand and body protection. The program administrator will select and require employees to use appropriate hand protection when employees' hands are exposed to hazards from cuts, abrasions, punctures, chemical or thermal burns, harmful temperature extremes, vibration, and skin absorption of harmful substances. Head protection. Each affected employee will wear appropriate protective headgear, hard hats, bump caps, etc., when working in areas where there is a potential for injury to the head from falling objects, impact hazards, extreme temperatures, or high UV levels. Hair enclosures. Where there is a danger of hair entanglement in moving machinery or equipment, or where there is exposure to means of ignition, a hat, cap, or net shall be used. Hair enclosures shall be reasonably comfortable, completely enclose all loose hair, and be adjustable to accommodate all head sizes. Materials shall be fast dyed, non-irritating to the skin, and capable of withstanding frequent cleaning. Hearing protection. The program administrator will select and require employees to wear appropriate hearing protection in environments where noise levels equal or exceed the OSHA Occupational Noise Exposure Standard, OSHA 29 CFR 1910.95, 8-hour time-weighted average of 85 decibels. See Hearing Protection Program for details. Respiratory protection. Each affected employee will wear respiratory protective equipment, respirators, when working in areas where respiratory hazards exist. All respirators will be in compliance with the OSHA 29 CFR 1910.134. See Respiratory Protection Program for details. Fall protection. If an employee's work area is more than 6 feet above the ground, floor, water, or other surface, the employee shall be protected as prescribed in Construction Safety Standard Part 45, Fall Protection, as referenced in R 408.13301A. Guardrail systems, safety net systems, personal fall arrest systems. Sharing PPE. An employer may choose to provide one pair of protective eyewear for each position rather than individual eyewear for each employee. If this is done, the employer must make sure that employees disinfect shared protective eyewear after each use. Protective eyewear with corrective lenses may only be used by the employee for whom the corrective prescription was issued and may not be shared. Hair enclosures shall not be reissued from one employee to another unless it has been thoroughly sanitized. Safety shoes and boots which are not worn over shoes and which are worn by more than one employee shall be maintained, cleaned, and sanitized inside and out before being issued to another employee. If more than one employee wears a pair of gloves, the gloves shall be sanitized before reissuance. PPE limitations. Employees shall understand and use PPE within the design limitations. Refer to manufacturer's design information for the respective PPE to be worn. For example, Class 0 rubber gloves are rated up to 1,000 volts and provide no cut or puncture protection. Employees shall not work on circuits exceeding 1,000 volts and will wear leather protectors over the rubber gloves to mitigate the risk of cuts and punctures. PPE conclusion. An effective personal protective equipment program is the responsibility of everyone involved, from management to the employee utilizing the equipment. PPE may or may not be used in conjunction with engineering or administrative controls. Regardless, PPE acts as the last resort method of abating potential hazards. When in doubt, ask. Employees, management, and the program administrator are here to help. The safety representative will now take a moment to record this employee training and have you sign accordingly.